cybersecurity. There are those who merely observe, and those who boldly explore the depths of the digital wilderness. Enter Spencer Alessi, an adept navigator of Active Directory and a skilled practitioner of offensive security. Like a cunning predator in the digital jungle, Spencer uses his expertise to uncover vulnerabilities and exploit weaknesses, always staying one step ahead of his prey. In this episode of Atomics on a Friday, we follow Spencer as he ventures into the heart of Active Directory, revealing the hidden threats and opportunities that lie within. From meticulously planning attacks to executing offensive security strategies with precision, Spencer shares his insights into the art of penetration testing and red teaming. We'll also discuss how organizations can defend against these advanced techniques, reducing their attack surface and strengthening their defenses against the relentless hunters of the cyber world. Join us on this thrilling journey as we delve into the strategies and tactics of offensive security, where knowledge and agility are the keys to survival. In the vast, unpredictable terrain of cybersecurity.
Happy Friday. You're muted. You're still muted. Yay.
Buttons are hard.
Yes. So are robots.
Yeah, I don't know how they work.
Howdy. Thank you for joining. Happy Friday. Welcome to Atomics on the Friday.
Are we actually doing it on Friday today? Sometimes
Yes.
I like to jazz it up and do it on a Wednesday.
It's not a Tuesday. Atomic
It was
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
It really threw people off.
I think that's the best part. It's not even the content. They're just very concerned that it was not Friday.
Yes.
Like people just show up and they're like, oh, I know this thing's occurring because it's Friday. And so then when you don't do it on Friday, people just realize it's not Friday and get very upset that they have 3 more days of the week, which is, I get it.
Yeah. Yes. It could be confusing.
Yeah,
But yeah, we have a cool. Thanks, Mauricio. I feel like you've been storing these up. All right. Thank you. Thanks for the ads. Those ones are free today.
Did we invoice for last week's?
No.
I haven't seen it hit the Venmo yet.
Yes. My wallet, whatever it's called, Bitcoin. But yeah, we have a big show, very big show.
The biggest show.
Yeah, that's an agenda. But let's bring in our cool special guest, and probably doesn't need a big introduction, but Spencer.
Hey,
thank you for joining us today.
What's going on? That introduction that was read by like the Safari voice, it was incredible. It was so epic.
Yep.
Can't really top that, so hopefully that was good enough.
You could just end right now. Like that was amazing.
Yeah, it's really good. It gets real good during Purple Madness.
Oh, those
So
are
good.
some top tier ones. Intern was on point those days.
Yeah, I know. Even those ones are awesome. I feel like we need to create like a gallery of audio that just plays those so folks can go back, because you'll notice here that our views start to drop. So
Yep. Right around now, since there's no more although do we have any more AI images? I think that was the one, right?
That might have been the only one today.
Oh, well.
There's some memes. We got memes
cool.
in here.
Oh, we got memes? Oh, that'll keep people in.
Yes. Yes. Stand by.
Memes and nerdery.
Yes.
Let's roll.
Yeah. So, yeah, we're here today. Spencer, why don't you introduce yourself? You're our special guest, and we brought you in for all kinds of knowledge dropping. And yeah,
Definitely.
go ahead, buddy.
What's up, everybody? My name's Spencer. I am a pen tester at Secure IT 360, which is a cybersecurity consulting firm. I always tell people, and when I talk to clients and everybody, I like to say that I'm a recovering sysadmin. I came up the ranks through help desk and systems administration and doing security for a financial services company. and did that for a while. So I managed AD, I managed servers and updated and did the patching, and we were financial services, so we had to do compliance and all that jazz. So I've got a lot of battle scars from those sysadmin days. So I spend a lot of my time now making tools and content and stuff like that to help myself, 10 years ago, making the content that I wish I had at that time. So yeah, I do pen testing. I specifically really like Active Directory, internal network security, PowerShell. I'm a big PowerShell guy. If you see me post stuff, so that's kind of my happy place. That's my jam. So internal pen testing, assume breach is where I like to play around and spend a lot of my time, and kind of be a mini threat actor, if you will.
That's awesome. And you also forgot to hype up your swag store.
Yeah, I had these ideas for t-shirts, and I always see like memes posted on Twitter and stuff. And I'm like, oh, that would make a great t-shirt. And I had like a whole catalog of them, like hundreds of these bookmarks. And I'm like, I need to get these out of my mind. So I'm just going to make some shirts. And this is the one it's like my brand, I guess, if you want to call it a brand. Cool. Ethical threat. But I've got stickers up there and shirts, and you should see my Notion. It's like thousands of lines long of ideas for t-shirts and stickers and stuff that I just haven't made yet. So it's kind of an idea thing and kind of cathartic for me to do some design and like creative stuff too. So
yeah, that's awesome. I know. I think one time I tagged you on one because it was really good. I was like, this is a shirt that Spencer can totally build here.
Yep. Yeah, I tried to like I don't know what you call it, like trend jacking. So like when the Fallout TV show was coming out, I made like a Fallout themed sticker just to try to see if it would work. And every time like the Fallout Twitter handle like posted something, I would post underneath, be like, hey, check out this sticker to try and like trend jack. I got nothing. Like I got like maybe 2 or 3 people, 2 sales from that. But I was just trying funny stuff like that to trend jack.
2 sales is better than no sales.
Yeah.
Take it where you get it.
Yeah.
I mean, we haven't made any ad revenue, so still rocking.
Have we really tried to make any ad revenue?
No, we haven't tried.
I was saying.
It's
working that. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, we have some. Like we have APT bacon, and we also have flaxseed APT bakers. So
flaxseed, that was a good one.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Oh
no, that's awesome.
Red team struggles.
Oh yeah.
We don't even red team, but we have red team struggles.
So funny.
Classic. Oh, before we move on, we should probably tell people who we are, Mike. You want to
go
first?
Sure. Yeah, sure. Michael Haig, threat researcher here at Splunk, and just kind of a similar story to yours, Spencer. I started out with doing like help desk printer support, and then kind of worked my way through sysadmin network and just up to here, MSSPs and MDRs and threat research.
I'm a little jealous of the beard in the profile pictures there. You guys got these nice full beards and got like this little scruff, which is now graying because that's an old picture of me, but I don't want to change it because I look so young there.
I look young there too.
He'll do. Well, you also had short hair there. Oh, that's fair.
Former selves.
That's true. Yes.
And that's not even me, so it's just Mike Reverse. You mispronounced Splisco, Mike. We talked about that earlier.
Gosh, you're right.
Splunk is dead. It's Splisco. Yes.
Yeah, you guys were telling me all those names for Splunk and Cisco and Mandiant and Google was the other one. I was cracking up in the pre-show before we went live. Like I've never heard those before.
Yeah. They're floating around.
That's good.
I'm Paul. I'm a senior threat hunter at Unit 42 on the managed threat hunting team. Also started out in help desk, surprisingly. Moved into security operations. And then actually wound up working with Mike years ago at Red Canary. I moved over here to Unit 42 about a year ago. So we've seen things. We don't know things, but we've seen them. So hopefully Spencer can teach us things.
Yeah, I like the senior hazard chaser. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I like to use the thesaurus and dictionary. I like to just mix things up, you know.
Yeah.
That's why I'm hard on the people using the term bypass for EDR, which nobody bypasses an EDR agent. But I feel like we solved that finally once and for all. But I still see it everywhere.
Yeah.
There was an
We'll bring it
episode
back
on
up.
it.
There was an episode on it. But I digress.
Can't find it fast enough. I'll get the
That'll
intern on
find
it.
What's next? What are we doing? Oh yeah, hunting. I think we got our first meme coming up.
Oh, cool. Yep, there it is. Yeah, Spencer, feel free. I don't think I had you add one in here, but feel free to throw some words in on these guys. Yeah, Paul, have you been chasing the Veeam stuff, or I haven't even looked into it enough yet? Or did you just
Did I add that? Oh, I think I added
didn't add
that.
it.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Surprise,
So
it was me. No, I'm
Veeam,
just kidding.
I mean, like if you're gonna throw out a CVE and incident on a Friday, it's probably one of like 5 things at this point. Veeam's been a minute, but new one in RCE, I believe, if I remember correctly, it is an unauthenticated RCE. So
yeah,
it's a good one. So if you have Veeam, go patch. Please don't put it on the internet. Just stop.
Have you guys seen Veeam on the internet? Like,
it shouldn't be on the internet.
Paul's nodding like I'm gonna have a stroke.
Not a lot. I think I've
Yeah.
seen in some of the previous ones, there's been random things that are just, oh yeah, we need to access it because we're not in the office. Just throw the management port on the internet, call it a day. Yeah, please don't do that. Just shut it down.
Yeah, that's terrifying.
Might as well just delete all your backups if you're going to put it on the internet because somebody will just do it for you. So
Yeah.
save a step.
Yeah, I usually, if I get access to like a backup server during a pen test, I will usually screenshot like, hey, I logged in here, like hovering over the button, delete everything, and take a screenshot of that.
And then accidentally misclick like, oops. Are those backups immutable?
You have backups? You have offsite, right? This is
Iron
okay.
Mountain. Give them a
Scare
ring.
sysadmin in 6 words or less.
Iron Mountain. Oh, I haven't heard that in forever.
I mean, people joke, but tapes
Tapes are still a thing,
Offsite?
right? Yeah.
Hey,
You'd be
LTO,
surprised.
what are they up to now? Back when we had a tape drive, it was like LTO 3, 4. They got me up to like 5 or 6 or 7 now or something like that.
It's been a minute, but yeah. Sounds about right.
We had old Tandberg drives. We had for DR, we would have like backup drives so that if the main one went down, we had a backup, and backups are still, or tape backups are still, it's nothing like having that backup in your hand and knowing that you can recover it,
Yeah. They're up to 6. At least I see a 6 on the website here, and it's like 2.5 terabytes.
Yeah.
So it's one thing to have that physical thing in your hand. When was the last time you went and actually proved you could recover from that piece of tape, right?
Exactly, sure.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like there's probably like, everybody's like, oh, we got like 80% of people using tapes. And then maybe like 2% have recently, I'd say 6 months, have actually performed and validated they could recover something off of that tape. Like, take a nice large number and then just slash it. It's down, but yeah.
Yeah.
Now, Mike.
Tapes are scary.
I don't know why you decided to look at PWSA. This was, excuse me, PSWA.
I know. I want to say PW as well.
Window.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
This was interesting. I know. I keep wanting to type PWSA, and then I have to like read it twice, and I'm like, PS. Like, it doesn't make sense, but whatever. Thanks, Microsoft. Yeah, this one was cool. At the bottom of the screen, you see that little report from CISA. That is literally the only blurb they give you on the actors using PowerShell Web Access. And in my head, I was like, what the heck is PowerShell Web Access? And so I open up, this large PDF from CISA, and I scroll through it for 20 minutes, and I'm like, all these words, excellent. And there's nothing else on it. So what did they do? What is this? And so I Google it, and I end up on this Microsoft site, and they just announced back in like 2012 or something, and they released a bunch of blogs, and it was like this exciting announcement. It was like, we're excited to announce PowerShell Web Access. You can access it now on your IIS server. And it literally rattles off, yeah, you could do this from your phone. These are the devices that we support. And I'm like, oh my God. Could you imagine? Like, you're just opening this up to the interweb so that your admins or your somebody could literally just sit here and phone in and run some PowerShell scripts.
I gotta manage my Veeam backups via PowerShell somehow.
Yeah.
Think I'm gonna VPN into the network and do this at a remote desktop? No. Open up my Mozilla on my phone and do it.
So,
just sitting there like on my, you got your phone sideways and you're like
valid,
and you hit enter.
You're at the airport
and you're like, oh crap, I deleted everything instead of
Well, while you're playing Mario Kart on your Nintendo Switch, you just like pause that and just check on your backups.
It's so true.
I think what's interesting sometimes about these like reports is like you'll have like a paragraph or two on like the most random thing, like, oh, more PS exec, and it'll talk about PS exec for the 9,000th time this year alone about being used. And then you have like the one new thing that's interesting and novel that adversaries are now not only using it, but they're installing it on your servers for you, configuring them so that they can use them, and then using them via a browser. Like, we're still talking about PS exec. We got 4 paragraphs on it, this report, but we only have a single snippet of PowerShell Web Access.
Yeah, and like so you got your built-in, web shell. And so, I basically was just like, well, it's just PowerShell. Like, can't I just install Invoke Atomic? And then I was just like, what's the point of creating an Atomic Red Team like C2 or anything at this point? I was just like, you just use PowerShell Web Access. It's like, it's all here. And I think it's Invoke Atomic test now, T1059-001. And I think I didn't run this one yet. I just ran the tester. Oh yeah, it works. So yeah, now you could just run get prereq. Can you tap? Oh, you could tap complete in there too. That's awesome. That's so good.
Yeah, so if you were thinking to yourself before Mike showed a screen, like, oh, is that just like PowerShell in a browser? Yes, that's exactly what it is. That's all it is. Yep. You got a system configured. You can hit that, just punch in the system name or the IP address, punch in the creds you have, boom, PowerShell Web Access.
Yeah, I probably should show so I'm on the machine AR-Win2, and then I logged in, and you could tell it what machine you want to connect to, and I told it to connect to my domain controller. So I just put AR-Win-DC, and so now, if you run this, you can do that, and you can do host name. So yeah, I'm on another machine. And then I'm just gonna run. Oh, you could tab up as well, because there's no better juiciness in your web shell than tapping up. There you go. Just gonna run some atomic test on a remote machine for funsies.
It's more evasive than your commercial C2s out there. Yeah. Why pay for Beaver Rat when you can use PowerShell in your browser?
Yeah,
can you use Beaver Rat in your browser?
It's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't have anime skins yet and stuff like that, but
I mean, you have the HTML and CSS. You could just do it yourself.
Exactly. Like, who needs a web shell?
I also don't like that the window is still this size.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very 2012.
Just expand it. I mean, when was the last update this thing probably got? 2012, right? Is it like, what, 12 years ago?
Maybe 2016, but yes.
I'd say go look at the docs and see when the last updates were. This is absolutely insane. Mm-hmm. The thing that sends me up the wall is somebody sat down and there was a whole team that built this thing, and they go, people want this, and then they went out and built this.
I'm telling you,
and nobody along the way was just like, do we really need this? We have PowerShell remoting, we have WinRM, we got 10 different ways we can execute on a box. Do we really need PowerShell in a browser? And a bunch of people were like, yeah. And it went up the chain and people built it, and then they haven't touched it since.
Yeah, here's the blog. Was this the blog? Wait, where's it at? Oh, maybe it was. Oh, yeah. First published on TechNet, September 17th, 2012. And you got to see it. They're so excited. You can tell this was such a big deal back then, which probably was. Who else wants a web shell? Let me see if I can share
Yeah,
that.
man, I don't. It was probably like, the discussions were like, hey, why not? Like, no one's telling us not to do this, and it sounds cool.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, you could do it from your phone. Like, you can't beat that. Tablets and slates, like this was back in the day. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy to install, and then it builds a little, puts a little app in there, your server on your IIS box, and you just log in.
Absolutely absurd.
And then I think they show it here, probably from the phone or something.
I feel like there was a CTF I did once that had a PowerShell web enabled or something. I can't remember what it was. What was it? Hack the Box or Try Hack Me or something like that, maybe.
Ah, that's pretty cool. I think somebody even, someone tweeted back and said that they were using this in a, was it CCDC or something like that? One of those like CTFs, they were
really?
using this. Yeah,
Yeah,
someone responded. Is that what it was?
Collegiate cyber defense comps.
Yep.
Yeah.
They had used it during that, and the other team was like, didn't see it or something. But yeah, native web shells. Why bring one when you can just install it?
Wicked.
Sick.
That's yeah. So yes, this is what Haig does when he reads reports. Everyone's like, "Oh yeah, PS exec. Yep, it's back." And then I'm like, "What is this?"
I think like an hour later, you already had the PowerShell script to install it on a VM and then connect to it. I think you also wrote it in a batch script for some reason because people still use bat files.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure everybody had options.
And I assume Shell Sweep, the tool you made, can detect these web shells.
No, not this one.
No, it's a different shell. This is PowerShell.
Yeah. This is
But
the ultimate
now,
shell.
The next version of Shell Sweep will now include PowerShell detections.
Yeah.
There you go, Mike.
Yep.
We're moving past web shells and going just into shells. So anything that's a shell, which now can encompass like C2s as well.
Yeah, we can go all in.
There you go. So I'll expect a new version for next year.
I told you what's coming, right? Did I tell you? September 13th? Okay, there's an announcement on September 13th. And it feels weird calling it September 13th because it's like, what that is, right?
Friday the 13th?
Friday the 13th.
It's Friday, yeah. So there's an announcement on the 13th.
So is this the announcement of the announcement?
Yeah, this is announcing this is hyping the soon-to-be announcement on September 13th.
Did Shell Sweep get acquired?
That would be awesome.
Seed funding round.
Yeah.
Series A, let's go.
It's been rebranded to Sheep Sweep.
The original name. We're pivoting back.
Yep, it's going back.
Oh goodness.
Yep. So yeah, we mentioned pretty much everyone dropped off like 10 minutes ago, so we're good now.
Actually, our increase, our numbers went up. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's actually shot up surprisingly well.
Yep.
But
Yep. We're doing all right.
So, the black suit. I picked this because surprisingly, this is kind of like the first instance I've seen of more Active Directory identity-based kind of documentation, which is interesting in that you kind of in some reports see things like, and in this one they do touch on like Kerber roasting or AS rep roasting, but not a lot of things actually touch too much on like AD or identity, and I thought this was kind of a good one. So I figured we just kind of jump in and kind of just look at what they were doing and maybe talk about why they do this and how we do it.
Yeah, I read this one when it first came out, and I remember thinking to myself, like, are they watching me pen test or or what's going on here? Because outside of like Cobalt Strike, a lot of the same techniques I use on pen tests, like curb roasting and even past the hash stuff, AS rep roasting when I see it, like very typical.
Make sure
Do you still use Cobalt Strike?
I don't for pen tests, no.
Okay.
I find there's so much overhead with R&D and just getting it running in many environments that we just don't have the cycles to kind of keep up with it. Mainly it's CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike's the top tier one in my opinion right now that gives me a hard time. But in many environments, with a good SOC, with good EDR, good controls in place, it's pretty difficult, I find. So
that's awesome. Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Hey, at least
So
you
what
guys
you're
make an
saying,
event.
hang on, we have a meme for this.
Do we?
Oh, here we go. Cobalt strikes are up, maybe down.
Yeah, I guess if you buy Ballast Kit and you get some of the other commercial stuff, you can buy some of those commercial tools that help with that. Now you start looking like a real threat actor. So I don't really like that. I like to look like a pen tester. So
That's fair.
yeah.
That's cool.
So this one in particular, so this is kind of interesting. So after they got their beacon in, they injected into, I think this is MSTC. They actually used Rubius. Now, are you familiar with Rubius? I presume. It's, as a AD connoisseur as yourself.
Oh yeah.
But for those who may not be
flavors of
familiar,
Rubius. I mean, loading it with PowerShell, loading the C#, yeah.
and for those who may not be familiar with Rubius, like what's kind of like the high level of the tool? Like what can it be used for?
So Kerberos. So working with Kerberos tickets, service tickets, and it's a Kerberos abuse tool, really.
So definitely targeting the AD identity aspect of a network.
Yep.
So in this case, they executed Rubius, and we actually see so not only the pulling from the command lines, but we also get some of the event logs that were utilized. ASRep roasting, which is similar to Kerb roasting, but has a difference. What is ASRep for those who may not be familiar with it?
So that's when pre-authentication, or there's no pre-authentication required on the account. So you don't have to authenticate in order to request the ticket for those.
So definitely an interesting one to be on the lookout for. And that's generally a more legacy setup for an account or a service account, correct?
They used to be in in a lot of the pen test training courses, it used to be like you get your initial foothold with ASRep roasting, and then you kind of pivot in. So you'll see that in some of the older pen testing courses.
Interesting. And so when you do ASRep, so again, you're looking for accounts that don't have the pre-authentication, or have pre-authentication set, no pre-auth. So in this case, we see they actually document it, the Kerb TGT account. Now that's a very interesting account in particular. For those who may not be familiar, that's kind of like, if you compromise this account, you have a bad day on your hands. What is the Kerb TGT account?
Yeah. Kirby TGT is the account that issues all the tickets, right? Like that's the master account in Active Directory. So if you compromise that, you can just continually, grant yourself Kerberos tickets in infinity. And to your point, what's interesting is that the pre-authentication is set on that, or no pre-auth is set on that account. So
now, I don't know I have yet to see this, but you, I presume, have to at this point in AD land go turn and configure Kerb TGT to have pre-auth disabled, correct?
Yes. Yeah, like that's not a default thing. Yeah. As far as I know, I mean, maybe there's some configurations where it would be, but definitely not on the KRB TGT, I wouldn't think ever, which is especially strange, I would think. So, yeah, that is weird. I can't think of a scenario where that would be required other than some like legacy application or something like that. A lot of times when I see issues like this during pen tests, it's like, oh, this legacy system or this old thing, or it was that way when we got here kind of thing. Those tend to be the reasons. So that leads me to think something legacy or something that somebody just misconfigured, but you literally have to go in, you check the box. Like, I don't know how you misconfigure that.
And you bring up a good point, which is in your instances, like, do you see ASRep being still viable in like a large majority of the assessments you do?
I haven't seen ASRep roasting on a pen test in like the last 2 years, probably.
Really?
So it's
So it
probably
is
been
kind
like
of.
a good 2 years since I've seen it and abused it on a pen test.
So
And
hopefully
I
things
don't
are
see it very
going
often.
upward. That's good. That's a positive sign, right? Like hopefully
Yeah.
things are moving forward that you're not having these.
Yep. Actually, the last time I saw it, I think I remember the engagement. It was about 2 years ago, and I did crack the hash. So
It wasn't KRBTGT, was it?
it was not
Okay, good.
No.
Summer
I
19.
did it through PSWA though, so that was extra cool. That was extra legal. I'm just kidding.
Did you install it yourself, or was it pre-configured?
Yeah, just for S&Gs, I just wanted to try it.
And then they decided that ASRep roasting wasn't enough, and they went on to curb roasting. So similar to ASRep, but different. In this case, for those who aren't familiar with curb roasting, what's like our goal with curb roasting?
Yeah, Kerber roasting is requesting a service ticket. And because of the way Kerber roasting works, just a feature in Active Directory, that service ticket is encrypted with the hash or the hash of the user's password, or the hash of the service account's password that you're roasting or requesting, right? So service account A has an SPN set on it. You request a service ticket for it. That service ticket is encrypted with the hash of that password. And then if they're not using the AES 256, if you request that ticket with RC4, that makes it a little bit easier to crack. And there's other encryption algorithms, but so you request that ticket and then you crack it or try to crack it.
Still used in your assessments, or have you come across it recently?
Yeah, I see curb roasting all the time. Pretty much every engagement, there's at least one account that's curb roastable. I would say probably like in half of those times, the built-in administrator account has an SPN on it and it's roastable. As of lately, though, I haven't been cracking as many. It's usually like 50-50 if I will crack one during an engagement. So although I am seeing curb roastable accounts, organizations seem to be catching on that, like, hey, let's just put a long password on it and we should be good to go with that. So I haven't been cracking as many lately.
Awesome. So definitely moving the needle of upgrading and swapping out legacy passwords for something a little bit stronger, more complex.
Yep.
Because we can't prevent curb roasting. It's how the function of that particular not protocol. It's per the Kerberos protocol of how that is set up for that particular instance. Yep. But the win is making it hopefully long enough and strong enough that an attacker cannot crack it, and that's the name of the game.
The famous last word, or like the famous mantra of the Microsoft world when you're pen testing, is like, it's just the way it is. It's a feature, not a bug, right? It's a feature.
That's what I think Tim mentioned it. We did the blog post on it. Just reading the RFC of Kerberos, and it was just kind of like right there. So it is not like a Microsoft special. It is actually just the Kerberos protocol. From,
and I always forget to shout out Tim when I mention Kerberos, because it seems like it's this thing that's just been around. It was in 2008, I think, with Tim and Dean discovered it and reported it, and turns out it's a feature like we were talking about. But where would we be without Tim and without Kerberos thing? You know,
probably still on ASRep roasting. Another tool commonly seen, I think, I don't think I've seen a breach report without this fun tool, SharpHound. I think everybody's favorite tool at this point. So what's our goal with using SharpHound, or why would we kind of use it to help us as an attacker?
Yeah, SharpHound's great from an attack perspective, or from attack path mapping, which is what SharpHound does. So it looks at all of the relationships in Active Directory. It can go out and try and discover sessions on computers. And it essentially is a graph representation of the attack paths in Active Directory environment. So you could say, what's the shortest path to domain admins is a common one. And it'll show you any paths if it exists. So, for example, maybe a domain admin is logged on to an untrusted workstation, And, Susie in accounting has admin rights to that system, which means she can access that system and maybe dump credentials or get tickets for that domain admin, and then, use that account to further pillage the environment.
Yeah. From your perspective, like, what are common like attack paths you see like all the time, or just very common
Yeah,
ones?
for me, a lot of what I see is users in groups that they shouldn't be in, like account operators, print operators. So admins will, think like, oh, put them in print operators and they'll be able to, install printers. But that actually is kind of bad and dangerous. So it's a combination of like putting it in, groups that they shouldn't be in, and then nested groups. I see that quite a bit. So like the IT help desk group, for example, needs to be able to administer accounts and reset passwords and stuff. But, the IT help desk group is inadvertently in another administrative group that happens to be in domain admins, right? So they kind of inadvertently do these nested permissions things, or nested group things that inadvertently give users more permissions than they need. So those are the two common ones. And then insecure delegations are just like permissions on different objects in Active Directory. So probably the worst I've ever seen is I saw everyone had full control over the root of a domain on an engagement.
Wow.
I found it with a tool that I use called adept, and I was like blinking my eyes. I'm like, there's no way. There's no way. I had to like double take, and I triple checked it with 3 different tools, and I'm like, no, this is messed up. This is bad. So I had to call the client, but that was the worst one I've ever seen. So stuff like that too is fairly common, where somebody delegates a permission, but they don't understand kind of what the permissions mean, or they do it inadvertently on a OU or something that they didn't need or didn't need access to.
That's wild. Now,
yeah, that's pretty crazy. I just searched up the name of the tool and I found your LinkedIn post on it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not like a super well-known tool. It was written by this guy named Matthew Buffett. Or Matthew, I think it's a French name. I think he's a French guy, but it's written in Rust, I think, if I remember right. And I tried actually updating it, but I know nothing about Rust, and I like banged my head on the keyboard and I stopped because I was going to update it and like add some features and stuff. But anyways, adept is super cool. It can look at all the delegations in an Active Directory environment and shows you them, quite nicely. So that's one of the tools that I use in every engagement to find some of those issues. And then I wrote like a companion PowerShell wrapper for that just runs the tool, exports it to a CSV, and then looks for things that are called like unsafe permissions. So it just automates some of that and creates like a nice little report. I actually doing a webinar on that same topic, like misconfigured AD permissions, in September 18th. So in like 2 weeks.
Nice.
So this is right top of mind because this is like what I've been working on lately.
That's awesome. We actually, we have in a slide or two, I think, some of your projects, and that's one of them is the adept, and then your script for it. So
yep, I'm a big fan of that tool. I wish I knew Rust so I could like tweak things or like update things. I've been debating like rewriting it in something like C# or something that I'm a little bit more comfortable with. But I mean, there's only 24 hours in a day, so.
Yes. Have you found any, like out there in the wild in a way, have you found any customers either before or after running like Sharphound or using Bloodhound, anything like that? Or even adept?
Have I found customers using it?
Yeah, either before or after being with you, are they like kind of constantly monitoring?
Yeah, there's a handful of customers that I've worked with. They're like, oh yeah, Sharphound, I've used that before. We've used it. That's definitely a popular one, I would say. Not as much anymore since they've moved to the community edition. It's a little bit kind of like, it's not as super user friendly, I don't think, to stand up for many sysadmins. You got to install Docker, and then like it's not hard, but it's like, if you don't use Docker all the time, it can be kind of difficult. And then just kind of using Sharphound, there's built-in queries and you can look for some, but if you don't know the Cypher query language, it can be kind of hard. So there is a little bit of a learning curve or like a higher skill cap with Bloodhound. But some of the other ones like adept, I've never heard of anybody using. I just stumbled across it one day. But I've never heard anybody else use it or talk about it. Not that I'm special or anything. I don't think it's that well known. So I'm, every time I get a chance, I talk about it because it's a cool tool.
Yeah, that is cool. I'll repost this because that is really cool.
I lost my train of thought. One question I had, which was, you had mentioned you had the everyone over the permit, delegated over the root of the domain. For those who may not be familiar, why is that potentially bad? Or, what's the kind of the context or scenario of that?
Yeah. So think of the root of the domain, right? All the other containers and organizational units, groups, users, workstations, servers, all those objects are underneath the root of the domain. And because of inheritance, if you set the permissions on that root and you set that it applies to all child objects, it's going to apply that permission to every single object beneath it. So whether you're in an OU or the root of the domain or in a sub OU, depends where you set those permissions. But because it was on the root of the domain and it was set for all child objects, it applied this full control permission or generic all on all of the permissions below it. And full control, generic all, just means you can do whatever you want. So you can reset passwords, you can change permissions, you can add users to the groups, delete things, essentially do whatever you want, barring any explicit denies, which take precedence over all the other allows. So yeah, this was a case where it was everyone had full control on all child objects. So pretty wild.
That's so basically Susie or Steve in accounting have control over the domain administrators group, or even domain administrator accounts, or basically anything at that point. And
it's the thing I always tell people is super hidden and sneaky, because you're not going to find that unless you, one, know where to look and you know what to look for. There's no alerts in Active Directory that say, hey, you're adding a bad permission here. There are some in other places, like with certificates, but with delegate permissions, you could just give domain users full control over domain admins group, right? And there's no warning. So it's really hidden. It's really dangerous. It's really sneaky. You can't find it unless you, like I said, know what to look for and know where to look. So it could be pretty dangerous.
Yeah, great context. Last one, touch on, because I know we got want to touch on some of your tools as well. AD find. What do we do with AD find? Obviously, they're throwing everything at the kitchen sink at this point, from enumeration and collection.
AD find is awesome. I am mistaken. I feel bad because I don't recall the author of the tool, but it's a legitimate tool. AD find is a legitimate tool that sysadmins commonly use or used to commonly use, but it's still supported. So if you go to the website, it's still being updated and supported. That's essentially a tool that helps you do adept queries. So you write your LDAP query like you would in Active Directory or other things. And you can use it to search for users, groups, essentially all the same enumeration stuff you would use with other tools, Power View or whatever else, you would use. You can use AD find for. It's closed source though. So the project itself is closed sourced. I don't know if in these reports it talks about cracked versions or not, or if threat actors have gotten source code. I don't know if you guys have seen that. I'd be actually curious to know if anybody's reverse engineered it and kind of customized it, because it is pretty well signatured. If you drop this on a client environment with most any product, it's going to flag it. So be curious to know if threat actors are customizing it at all.
I think I've only ever seen it renamed. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much renamed.
Yeah.
There's a couple comments in the chat about, Kerber roasting with zero OPSEC and, showing TTPs are 10 years old. You can say they're unskilled and low level, but people, adversaries are human, and we do and exert the least amount of energy possible to achieve a task. And that task in this case, Kerber roasting an account. Why go above and beyond? If I don't get blocked, I don't get flagged, I don't get stopped.
Yep.
Why do it? So
yeah,
I think that's the one thing that's common, is just we think it's basic, but if it worked,
Yeah, and curb
Why do anything
roasting,
else?
like if you curb roast, if there's like 10 curb roastable accounts and you curb roast them all, it's going to be super noisy, and a good SOC will pick that up. But I still, one of the things I do on my pen test is I will document what things get alerted on, what things are blocked, and et cetera. So I would say probably 50%, 50 to 60% of my engagements, curb roasting is not detected still, unfortunately. And a
And
lot of times the client either doesn't have a SOC or they're just not, seeing that curb roasting activity happening.
you talked about a good point, right? Like you say, like 10 accounts are curb roastable. You go into an organization, and I'm sure you've seen a wide variety of sizes of organizations, right? I've worked with some that have like 300,000 users alone.
Yeah.
Like, what's your threshold, right? You say, oh, anything over 10 or anything over 50, right? Like, you
Yep.
have to, it's really tuned to the environment, and it's,
Yep.
people are like, oh, just do a calculation. Like, it's not as simplistic as you think it is,
Yep.
but it does require some work. But it is
Yeah,
doable.
I think like if you're spraying curb roastable accounts or if you're curb roasting a lot, I think there's good opportunities for detecting it. And there, like Rubius has OPSEC safe ways to request service tickets, and there are other tools that you can use to do it as well, and you can do it manually, if you will. So there are more OPSEC safe ways to do it. But like you see in that report, like threat actors are just running Rubius and running or PowerView invoke curb roast, right? Like it's nothing special.
I mean, again,
Heavy
if you
smash
drop
and
it
grab.
and you run it and nothing like ransomware doesn't care. They're in there and they're out. Some of them in 3 days. I mean, in some cases it's weeks, depending on the environment and the complexity and how they're trying to move and certain things get in their way. But for the most part, they're not doing anything overtly quote unquote
Yep.
sneaky. It's all pretty loud, and that's what most people are getting hit by. So yeah, we can
Yeah.
talk about APTs all day, but
Yeah, and this report is like a perfect example of why I run pen tests the way I do. Like everything in this pen test, I pretty much do outside of like the who am I, like NL test. I don't do that stuff. But like I use Sharpound and Rubius and all those other things, and that's why is because of this example.
and that's a great point. I've said this before. If you're on the defensive side, if you can't keep pace with your pen test, you're going to struggle with ransomware operators. And
Yep.
if you struggle with that, probably going to struggle trying to find an APT who is well more resourced and is going to potentially do the low and slow. And while they do have some novel things, the majority of them still have overlapping techniques and usage of ransomware operators, what potentially
Yep.
some people call low skilled, which if you achieve the objective, it's not low skilled and you didn't do anything to stop it, then is it low skilled? But again, we could debate that all day for people, but your
Yep.
point. If you can keep pace with a good pen tester, you're going to do all right. If you struggle, well, let's crank it down. You go.
I'm excited, Spencer, for you to start using PSWA on your engagements.
I
It's
Haig's
on my
going to
list
drop
of
some
to-dos.
blogs on it, and then more people are just going to start using it. And basically, at this point, Haig's an APT.
You're gonna see it on my report, and you're gonna see me talking about it on Twitter and stuff. Like, I
Yes.
use this super awesome C2, this new C2 channel.
Thanks,
Works great.
Microsoft. All right, let's keep on rolling. Now, we've touched on actually a few of your projects, so I do want to link them here. Some interesting ones. So you did talk about the 80 ADeleg and your tool on that. Let's touch on bad shares and script sentry, like just high level them. Like what are they used for? How do you use them?
Yeah, so bad shares came out of necessity. I have like a whole bunch of VMs on my pen testing machine and a whole bunch of labs and stuff. So I wanted a way to test some of the tools that I had. One of those being Script Sentry, and then some of the other tools that I have for like discovering shares and looking for credentials and that kind of stuff. So if you run like Snaffler or want to test the tools like that, or if you're old school PowerView, find interesting domain share files, which is a mouthful. But so if you want to run tools or test tools like that in a lab, you need like misconfigured shares. So bad shares just essentially creates some shares and fills it in with dummy data, like and creates random folder names like IT, accounting, HR, blah blah blah, and it'll intentionally misconfigure those shares with some permissions, and it'll dump like some plain text credential files throughout the shares there, so you can test some of those tools. So that's bad shares. Adept we mentioned already. That's the tool that helps you kind of find misconfigured delegations and permissions. And then Script Sentry was one of the first like big tools that I released, which is not very big, but essentially that finds dangerous and misconfigured logon scripts. So I was doing an engagement once, and I ran ping castle like I normally do. Some big ping castle find, and it found that there was users able to modify files that are being deployed by group policy. And I started looking into it, and I'm like, oh, there's logon scripts on this group policy as well. And I looked into it more, and then I saw that the sysvol share had misconfigured permissions. Like you right click on sysvol, and it's like, yeah, everyone had right modify permissions on the sysvol share. I'm like, that doesn't seem right. That seems weird. And then I started looking into it more, and then I found all these other issues and kind of did a bunch of research to discover kind of like what are the other fringe cases related to this. So there's a number of misconfigured things that can happen with logon scripts, mostly around like the sysvol share can be misconfigured, and then the logon scripts themselves can be misconfigured. And then what's also interesting is the UNC paths within those logon scripts, because a lot of times a logon script does something. It executes something or it installs something. So I was seeing on my engagements that admins were like running batch files or installing, using executables, right, or MSIs to install stuff on login. So it's like, what happens if those are misconfigured? Well, if they're misconfigured, you can obviously modify them, change them, whatever. So there's a lot of these different misconfigurations that can happen. So script entry is a tool that I wrote in PowerShell that goes out and tries to find all these and spits them out to the screen and displays them all.
It's awesome. So from an attacker perspective, great for you. You can find them. You can go test them on your day. From the defensive side, you potentially get some things that you would want to go look at and potentially tune up. So then before Spencer shows up, hopefully then he goes and runs it and you don't get owned by that.
Yep. Yeah, fortunately, these logon script issues are not as common as other attacks, but I still see misconfigured permissions quite a bit on logon scripts throughout the year in my engagements. One of the more interesting attacks is when an administrator has a logon script set, and that logon script is attempting to map a share that doesn't exist, like on a server that doesn't exist. And what's cool from an attack perspective is, as an attacker, you can create a DNS entry for that share or that server that doesn't exist, point it to your attack machine, right? And then when that admin logs in, it's going to try and map that drive. It's going to initiate an authentication, right? And then that's going to be redirected to you, so you can steal that authentication and relay it, or you can capture credentials. So really kind of a sneaky attack if you have the right conditions there.
It's top tier.
Yeah, that is gosh. I wish I had a spoiler alert for that one, because that one was good.
Yeah. Another one of those issues that's like you don't get a warning for those things. There's no like, hey, your logon scripts are misconfigured. It's very hidden, and you don't know it's there unless you go looking for it. And many times during the engagements when I find those, they're like, we had no idea. Like I didn't even know we even had those logon scripts. And a lot of people's logon scripts are out of date, and they don't use most of them anyways. Most people are using group policy now. So, yeah.
It's another one that's the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah.
Group policy. Move from one to the next. But awesome. Great stuff. Awesome tools. And plenty more. These are just the initial ones that we picked out. And you see me on LinkedIn kind of talking about these. So these are great tools. And again, not just for offensive, from defensive side, help you out and do some detection, testing as well.
Yep. Yeah, and Script Sentry, I wrote it for defenders. There's no exploitation that's written in it. I have some in my own private collection of wares. But for the public tool that I released, it's strictly a discovery only.
That's powerful. Yeah, I love that you've taken like a lot of your experiences and like on job like sites and turning them into these like types of tools to like, either make things easier with bad share or help with the delegator and things like that. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate that. One of the things that has been kind of the reason why I've made some of these tools is when I do retesting. Like I really like a nice screenshot, right? Who doesn't like a nice screenshot in the reports? So I can run some of the tools that I have, and it produces a nice screenshot that shows exactly like, is it remediated? Is it mitigated? Is that issue still there? If it is, it produces a nice screenshot. So a lot of the tools I try to make them screenshot worthy so I can include them in the report. So they're out of necessity and kind of my own need for that, but also to help sysadmins and security people.
I mean, the approach is the same if you were going to run this as like a defender, right? Like you go and run it, you go, oh, here's the thing, pass the team, they fix it, and then you want to validate it's done and obviously document it, right? Like it's one thing to go fix it, but if you didn't test it and prove it, did you actually do anything?
Yep. Yeah, for sure.
So phenomenal. Same thing, just different spin and perspective. Awesome. I think is that. Did we?
Is that it?
That is.
That was it.
That's it. Look at that. Running on time. Good to go. We occasionally do that well.
Okay. One random question.
Just one.
Outside of the permissions on the root domain, what is another like very obscure thing you've run across in AD?
Obscure. Let me think. Let's see here. Obscure. Probably, I think another obscure thing, I think group policy is one that can get kind of weird, especially when you have like security filtering involved. Because security filtering specifies like what accounts or groups the group policy applies to. And it's not super obvious when you're setting up those, like what that does, at least in my mind. So I've seen some weird things with group policy where there's a group policy set that does something or specifies some permissions or deploys some software or something like that. And the security filtering was set such that it applied to more groups or more users than they originally thought. Those are kind of interesting. And the other ones that are kind of obscure are the ones that they're in like the middle. So it's not like everyone on the root domain, and it's not like, domain users in a domain admins group. It's kind of like in the middle where there's misconfigured permissions, or there's a misconfiguration that leads to something, but it doesn't lead you to the end goal yet. It's like in that middle point where it gets you somewhere, but it doesn't get you all the way. Those can be kind of tricky too, or kind of obscure, because a lot of times clients will be like, well, everybody has access to that share. Everybody has access to that thing. So it doesn't really matter. But those kind of get you to that next step. So that next hop. So, that's kind of an obscure answer in and of itself.
No, it's perfect.
But
it's interesting stuff because
it's like there's extremes, and then it's like the middle stuff, which is the majority that I see,
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I saw your post on group policy. I think it was this morning, and it reminded me of that old book, that group policy book. And I Googled it. It was like written in 2004. And I'm like, oh man, I remember having that book. It's like, gosh, I'm that old reading a book on group policy,
But I guarantee you everything still applies today.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's probably some of the best books to go buy. Honestly, like just go back from like some of the core technologies like group policy, even like Don Box's com programming stuff. If you're into that, like, yeah, it's old, but still completely relevant and useful for today. So like, you're like, oh, it's old. No, just go pick it up.
Yeah.
Phenomenal.
Yeah. Jeremy Moskowitz. And back in the day, the website was gpanswers.com, and now it's mdm&gpanswers.com.
Yep.
It's funny.
Is it all Intune content now?
I already closed it. Probably.
It's migrating.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Spencer. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. And
I super
appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on and allowing me to chat about myself. Talk about all the cool stuff I did. No, just super appreciate it. You guys you're awesome, super good hosts. Love the show, fan of the show, and I super appreciate you guys putting me on and having me on the show and talking shop with you guys.
Sure. And before we go, you have a webinar coming up. You mentioned a little bit earlier. When's the details on that again?
So it's September 18th at 12 o'clock Eastern. It's called this Silent but Deadly: The Stinky Truth About Active Directory Permissions, I think is the name. I'm trying to find a delicate balance between, having fart jokes and, other scary things in the webinar and keeping it professional, because it's, for my company that I work for.
Sure.
So I got to keep it classy, but I'm going to try and make it funny and entertaining as well, while still trying not to burden sysadmins with more things to look for or to do. But it's all about AD permissions, like we kind of talked about earlier, how to find them, where to look, and some tools that you can use to find those things, and some advice for fixing that stuff. And I hope it's helpful. If anybody is interested, you can. I posted a link somewhere on my social media. I'll be posting again for the registration.
Definitely.
But
Awesome.
That's
So
awesome.
definitely check that out. Definitely will be watching it myself. So looking forward to it. And again,
yeah, I
thanks for
appreciate
coming
the
on.
shout out. That's super awesome.
Always. All right, y'all. And hey, do we have any? I don't think we have anything on the books just yet, but we'll be back in a couple weeks.
Yep. I think we're off next week, and we'll figure something out.
Yeah, only
We have
back.
some people.
We do.
Run it
We're
back.
just waiting.
Yeah.
I think I got one lined up for tentatively in October, so more details to come on that one.
Ooh, a Fright Fest.
Ominous is the word I was looking for.
Ominous.
Yeah, ominous.
Very
Another
ominous.
announcement of announcement. I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got September 13th. We got October. Hype
Stay
train.
tuned. All right, y'all. Thanks for checking in. We'll catch y'all next time. Toodles.
See y'all. Have a good day.